Hello, this is Gangsta B, formerly known as Bradley Wright, here to show you what you see and how it works alright. First, we're going to go into figure ground, which is like a Get-Salt principle, and it's the tendency to perceive visual environment in terms of figures that stand out from surrounding background. Like, this woman's face is only visible because of the black part that stands out from the white background, and we can put all that together and see a woman's face even though there's no clear outline of the woman's face. Then we move on to principles of grouping. These are proximity, similarity, continuity, closure, and connectedness. Proximity is tending to perceive objects as belonging together when they are close to one another. So each of these two groups of lines we think belong together because of their proximity to one another, meaning they're close. Next is similarity. We tend to group objects together that have similar characteristics. So we have the four circles in the top and then like a plus sign of boxes, but why do those go together? Just because they're boxes and they're very similar, so we put them together in our own brains. Then we move on to continuity. And continuity is the tendency to perceive a series of stimuli as a unified form when they appear to represent in a continuous pattern. So the IBM sign is a good example of continuity because all the lines are continuous, so we put them together, and the letters are all broken up in the same pattern, so we can read that they're letters just like that. Then is closure. This is the tendency to group disconnected pieces into a meaningful whole. So here we have like two blanks for eyes, or two black circles I guess for eyes, a weird nostril shape that doesn't really look like a nose, and then a couple black lines that make up a panda's legs. We put that all together somehow in our brain and see a panda, even though they're not connected or outlined. Connectedness is the tendency to perceive objects as belonging together when positioned together or moved together. So this reminds me of a graphic organizer. They have lines or little connections going to one another, so we put them together because 4 isn't the same as C because it doesn't have a line going to it, while C has a line going to 3 and F and 2, which just makes sense because our mind puts it together because they are connected. The next is cues for depth perception, and those are broken down into binocular cues and monocular cues. The two binocular cues that we go over in this unit are convergence and retinal disparity, and the monocular cues are relative size, relative clarity, interposition, texture gradient, linear perspective, and shadowing. So the first is convergence, and that's a binocular cue, and that is to the extent to which eyes converge inward when looking at an object. That creates muscular tension, and the brain gauges that for depth perception. So with these circles out here, your eyes don't have to squeeze together as tight to see the red, so you think that's closer to you. Your eyes have to squeeze in a lot more, and it works your muscles in your eye a lot more to see the little white part, which makes it feel more far away. Retinal disparity is another binocular cue, and that means nearby objects produce a greater form and clarity, so you can see that the softball, which is closer to the camera than the girl's face, is more clear, and that's just because it's more close, and depth of field with the camera, but you get the intentions. Next is relative size, which is another monocular cue. If the brain has two things that are of a similar size, but one is much smaller than the other, then that puts the bigger one closer to the person, or closer to the spectacle, the viewer. So as we can see these two women, her arm really cannot be bigger than the other woman's whole body, so our brain tells us that she is closer to the camera and or us than the other woman whose body is smaller than the forearm of her amiga, and that is friend, female friend in Spanish, for those who don't know Spanish. On to relative clarity, which is kind of just like that binocular one. Let's go back up. Let's see what that was. That was retinal disparity. Retinal clarity means nearby objectives are clearer than more distant ones, but this one is monocular, and so in this case we can see these up-close buildings in the picture a lot more clearly than we can see the far-off towers in the background. Even though we can still see what they are and what they are there for, we just can't see like each individual window and things of that nature. Next is interposition. So there's King Bradley on top of the rest of the kings of the world, and you see me more clearly than everybody else, and I block the view of the other ones. I almost knock a fat shadow onto them because I'm better, and I'm up front, and I'm closer to you. And it's a monocular cue, which means the objects are obscured by other objects. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Gangsta B needs to take a chill pill. Objects obscured by other objects are perceived as being farther away. So, me being the top king and closer to everybody, you can see me and I block the view of the haters. Then there's texture gradient, which is another monocular cue, and this means that the details of nearby objects seem more coarse and noticeable than those of farther away objects. So, one example from the picture are these people's umbrellas. We can see each individual little petal from it up close with the man and the woman there, and then if you scoot back towards the middle with that triangular building in the background, the umbrellas on the way there are much less clear, and also with the bricks closer, or which seem more close to you, are more clear and distinct than the ones far away, which you can't even see. Finally, we have linear perspective, which is another monocular cue, and this means that objects and spaces between them look smaller as they become more distant, and parallel lines converge as they recede into the distance, kind of like the vanishing point in art class when we first started drawing 3D things. There's one point in it where all the parallel lines go to, and that's how you can tell that things are 3D and going farther away. Thank you for listening. I hope you've enjoyed this lecture on perception, and Gangsta B is going to let you see his source. We're excited. Principles of Perspective Notes, made by my excellent teacher. Thank you very much. Have an excellent day. See you next week. That's all I got for you.